Welcome to Speak of the Devil. My name is Reverend Campbell, and I am streaming in 4K. So, because this is a live stream with a Skype component, because we have a guest, of course, there may be a slight delay in the audio video. Let me know if my audio is faster than the video. I would appreciate it, and I'll try to adjust on the fly throughout the show. But thank you all so much for joining me. Today, I'm being joined by the beautiful Aura DeWolfe. How are you, my dear?
I am very well tonight. How about yourself?
I'm doing great. I'm doing great. And we've got a great conversation to be had for everyone in the chat room. Joining us live, thank you so much. Dalton, Valeria, Wes, my man. Alex, Mr. Victor Wicked, what's up? Chris, great to see you again. Ragna, Stephanie, how are you, my dear? Mike Bates, how's it going, man? Kelvin, Zombie Rider 75. Your guys' handle names. This is great. All right. So all of these shows are brought to you by patrons of Speak of the Devil. Aura, of course, is a benefactor patron. Thank you, my dear. We also have DA up there. But we have some brand new Admirator and Accusatorum patrons. Thank you all so much for your support. I do appreciate it. Lauren, how's it going? It's been a while. Or at least it feels like it. All right. Too long. I want to preface our conversation tonight by letting you guys know, David, great to see you, man. Thanks for joining us. MJ, it's been a while with you, too. How you doing? This conversation and many conversations like this one that we have on this show, they're based on the idea of examining a topic. So when you see these posted in social media or you see them in an email, I often get immediate emotional reactions to the topics. So, for example, when I did the spiritual Satanist topic with Zaftig, a lot of people didn't watch it. They just outright refused to watch it because they thought that we were going to be talking about spiritual Satanism and not examining the idea of spiritual Satanism. But I, as a Satanist, question all things. I like to question established ideas. I like to question my own perspectives. And that means we talk about things that we may think we understand or have a firm understanding of. And through that discourse, we may realize that we were actually ignorant to the truth behind that topic. That's what I challenge all of you to do today, and for all of these types of discussions that we have in the past and present, whenever you're rewatching any of these shows. Make sure that your mind is open so that you can accept the reality of a topic rather than your perception of a topic. And on the end of that, you may actually grow as a human. Could you imagine that? Wouldn't that be great? Let's grow together here. All right, so we've got a lot of ground to cover. We're going to be talking about universal basic income. Aura, this was your topic of choice. Can you inform the good folks watching why you thought this would be a good conversation?
It was a school paper. I had an English class, and they gave me a list of topics I could choose, and this was the one. It was very fascinating research, so I thought it would be good to bring it to the table.
I think so too, because I came into this conversation, like when you first said, hey, what about this idea? And we were sort of riffing lightly on it. I had one perspective. And then after doing research, I ended up with a completely different perspective. And so I don't know how much people actually believe when you say stuff like that. But it's true. Like I genuinely, and I'm going to express that throughout a conversation, the course of it, where I was and where I am now. But I do think it's really important to be able to be, willing to change, but also too open to realities that maybe you haven't experienced before. And this is the essence, I think, of what it means to be a human and be able to have perspective. And certainly, I would say the essence of being able to be any type of lesser magician. You simply cannot effectively use satanic lesser magic if you don't have perspective. And that means being open to other humans' experience. That allows you to manipulate them. If you're doing everything through your own lens, you're a bull in a china shop, and it's never going to work. Or maybe
you're stuck in your ways and not willing to grow.
Yeah. And either way, I think it's an abject negative. So let's talk about this. Are you guys playing Dungeons and Dragons in the chat room? What the hell is happening here? understand you. All right, we're going to be talking about universal basic income. However, we're going to frame the conversation before we get into the nit and gritty of UBI, not UTI, UBI. And we're going to start with why the topic comes up more often than not. And there's two primary reasons that I found, and Aura, correct me if I'm wrong, that it has come up. And one is poverty, and the other is robotic automation. So we're going to cover both of those ideas briefly before we dive into the topic at hand, because it's important to set the stage before you have the conversation. So let's set the stage. Starting with poverty. I'm sorry, I was trying not to talk through a burp right there. Aura, can you give us an idea of what's the poverty line in America right now? Median
For
income
a single household, it's 12,000. Give me a second to pull that up. No, wrong one. Damn it.
You have pages of notes that you're going through.
I do. I have so much research. So the poverty line in America is $12,140 for a single person. That's one person.
Yeah. That's insane. That's insane though.
$12,140. It increases per person at an additional $4,320.
Oh wow.
So a family of four needs to make $25,100.
I don't know how you live
at poverty.
Yeah, I just don't know how you would live with that, with a family of four, and that of course is assuming 2 children, 2 adults,
2 working adults.
Right. That's crazy to me. But poverty is linked with a number of different individual and social issues that end up costing the society at large as well. Part of that's healthcare, part of that is judicial system, part of that is welfare. There's a lot of reasons why having a larger populace steeped in poverty is a net negative. And so when we're having these conversations, because I'm a Satanist, I don't look at these topics through the emotional lens that a lot of other people do. I don't look at it, through caring about the individual welfare of the individual, because quite frankly, one, these are, abstract conversations without a face, even though they are straight up reality. But 2, and as harsh as this sounds, unless they're like related to me in a family sense or a chosen family, I just don't care. Like it's not my problem.
Not my monkeys, not my circus, not my circus, not my monkeys.
Yeah. That's funny. So I think it's important to be able to separate the individual Satanist's opinion from a societal opinion at large, because ultimately, if we want to be effective Satanists, we have to be able to operate within the society that we live. Naturally, each society around the world has different rules that they all abide by slightly, some more extreme than others. And because Satanists are not martyrs, we must be able to blend in, hence obey the laws of the land in which you live. That being said, in order to live within that society, you have to understand the rules and regulations of that society, and also understand what makes that society great and what makes that society weak. And in this
I'd like to address David for a second. Oh, okay. That's the national average. That's not state-based. That's not city-based. It's different when you get in the bigger cities. Right. Yeah, for where you're living, it's astronomical. But
wait, do you know where he lives?
He just put it, Orange County, California. Oh, okay. And California is expensive as hell anyway.
Reading. That's what's for dinner. It's good for you. Yeah, again, all of these statistics are going to vary regionally. Your minimum poverty line in New York is going to dramatically be different than your minimum poverty salary in Kansas, for example. So we always have to remember that. But when we're speaking to this, we're speaking to the national average. And so, of course, variations will occur. That's life. It's just how it works. That being said, we have to be able to separate ourselves from the society when we want to enact will in our own lives. But if we're going to be operating with that society, we have to be able to understand it. And part of understanding that is understanding how we can succeed and how we fail. Are there systemic issues at play or are there not? We have this romantic idea in America that anyone can just pull themselves up by their bootstraps and achieve anything they want. And that's not the reality. Now, every once in a while, we do run into cases where people do, but that is not the common reaction. And so often you're going to run into people when they're speaking to poverty as, well, it's the individual in poverty's problem. They're the one at fault. But you also have to take in ethnic issues. You have to take in regional issues. You have to take in background issues because, believe it or not, that has a lot to do with it. Where you were raised and by whom you were raised has a lot to say about the average of where you're going to end up. So yes, some people can rise above that, but the majority do not. And that's not hyperbolic. That's reality. So we can look at some of the percentages here for poverty rate amongst ethnicities. For black children, 38.2% of them are living under the poverty line. For Hispanic children, it's 32.3%. For non-Hispanic white, it's 17%. And for Asian children, it's 13%. That is a large percentage of children growing up in abject poverty. And you total all of that up, and this blew me away when I read this statistic. About 15 million children in the United States, 21% of all children, live in families with incomes below, not at, below the poverty threshold, the federal poverty threshold. That blows my mind. And it's not because I love every child, though I give children more of a benefit of the doubt than any adult because I'm a Satanist. But they, to quote Whitney Houston, I believe the children are our future. Teach them well and let them lead the way. I grew up with Whitney Houston. She was great. They literally are going to be the ones that define the legal system in America moving forward. They're going to be the ones that are governing in the future. So I think it's important to give them the best opportunity while they still are wrapped in that blanket of carnality, of magic, before they've become jaded and forced to see the perspective that society wants them to see. While they are still young and impressionable, give them the best opportunity to learn how to be their own individual rather than a systemic number in the system. That's why I care about that. Not because we all have to love children, but because I live in this society and I want to see the society be a better version of itself so that I can be better within the society, so that I can act through the society without restriction. It's perfectly rational. It is self-preservation at the beginning and end. That is why I care about this. What do you think about poverty, Aura? Does poverty have...
I've been there. What do I think about poverty? I've been there. I spent all of my 20s in poverty. I was on food stamps. Mm-hmm. I was trying to go to school, raise 4 children. I was living in New Mexico at the time, and it sucks. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I was there. The struggle's real.
It really is, though. Like, there's some real systemic issues that come along with poverty, right?
yeah, you know, when you're coming to the end of the month and you've got your nickel and diming it just to get a gallon of milk, it's heartbreaking. It's
having to choose between medication and food. Like
heat or gas,
right.
diapers, formula.
Like unfortunately, I'm not sure. This is there was a song in the 90s. This is going to sound really stupid and trite. There was a song in the 90s called by the band Everclear, and it was like their one famous song. I can't remember the name of it or anything, but I remember the lyric reference, and it was it was something along the lines of everyone should experience a welfare Christmas or something like that. I my
Everclear has more than one good song.
Okay, well that was the one hit that I'm aware of. But that idea of a welfare Christmas as a child is it's ingrained inside my brain because I was there. I lived that. And that's why I do everything I can not to have my children have to live that. I remember distinctly, my mom was able to pull herself out of that, but her friends didn't. And so when we visited them, and they were, just having their regular family Christmas that they thought was wonderful, from the outside looking in, it was sad. And like, I understood the poverty so much so, even as a child, she offered me like a marshmallow. And I said, I don't need it. I think your children should, would like it more. And that's a dick thing to say as a kid to a parent offering a fucking marshmallow. But that was the concept that I had, even at that young age. I see the poverty you live in. I was there. I don't need this. You need it more than I do. Like being able to recognize that. And that line from that song has always stuck with me and reminded me of that moment in my life as a child. Because, man, growing up in poverty, it's rough. And it's not just an experiential situation as it was for me. And you ultimately were able to pull yourself out.
Yeah, and it was luck. I had been out of work for a while. I was on disability because I'm bipolar, and I struggled holding down a job, going to therapy, getting the medication right. It took time. I started medication therapy when I was 22 years old. I didn't get my shit together until I was 30.
Wow.
The medication roller coaster is horrible. So when I looked at my children, who, I was mainly a stay-at-home parent, I did dance during this time to help pad.
Like Belle Biv DeVoe hip hop, or
No, I was an erotic dancer for
tell me more.
10 years.
I'm sorry.
I started at 18.
Wow.
and hung up my heels when I was 28.
Wow. See,
yeah.
And it's a lifestyle for me. I still have yet to hang up my heels. So I dig it.
But it was totally threw me for a moment.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. That was my fault. I had to throw a fucking joke in there.
It was great though.
Well, let me talk about these some of the systemic societal impacts of poverty on children. Again, focusing on children, not adults,
Take it
because
away.
they're the ones that thank you, that are really suffering. Poverty is linked with negative conditions such as substandard housing, homelessness, inadequate nutrition and food insecurity, inadequate childcare, lack of access to health care, unsafe neighborhoods, under-resourced schools, which adversely impacts all of our nation's children, greater risk of several negative outcomes such as poor academic achievement, school dropout, abuse and neglect, behavioral and socioeconomic problems, physical health problems, and developmental delays. There was actually,
as well as low self-esteem.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Yeah. Of course. Yeah. And that's just like
byproduct of all of those things.
How could you not have it if you're living in shit? And how can you ever think that let's say you are born of a Satan, as a Satanist in abject poverty. You have to have some external force telling you what you are, telling you that there is potential. For me, it was a Satanic Bible, but without that, I don't know. Like, I would probably just be like a regular dude just doing his thing, and I may have ended up as successful as I am, but I don't know if that's true. Do you think that a child without external forces telling them that they're truly able to succeed and giving them the opportunity will be able to succeed on their own?
You would have to have one hell of a strong child.
Yeah.
Under most circumstances, no, I don't think so. I think they need that external voice, that external push, that person rooting for them, telling them they're better than this,
right?
Or that, they're more than where they came from, where they started. I've done that with my kids that, raised the way they are. The choices are theirs. They make these choices. They make the choice to react and act to the external area. If they want to struggle like they saw me struggle when they were young, fuck off in school.
Yeah.
Fine. You're not hurting anybody but yourself. Not turning in that paper because the teacher pissed you off. Teacher don't care. Yeah, teacher don't care. It's on you. It's on you. You're hurting yourself that way. So yeah, they do need that cheerleader. Children do need that cheerleader, I think. For a kid to come from an abusive situation with no cheerleader and turn themselves around and make somebody of themselves, I think that's rare. I think that is a very rare quality, an admirable quality, but rare.
Yeah. And statistically, it's very rare as well. But it does happen from time to time. So we can't eliminate that, the individual can truly achieve wonderful things on their own. But it is such a rare thing when you are being beaten, on a semi-daily basis, or you have cigarette butts put out on your chest, because you're in an abusive family situation. I mean, I've had someone, a listener once tell me that they were, and I'm, again, not going to say names, but I'm going to give the situation for the depravity of it. They were raped by their mother and father growing up. And so that's the lifestyle that they knew. This was life to them as a child. That's heartbreaking. It
is heartbreaking.
Horrendous. That's terrible. But that is what life is like for a lot of children in poverty and out of poverty, to be fair.
It's worse than poverty, though.
Yeah.
Because
also, if the parents are drawn into that place, and there's been studies on this, you are more likely to make bad decisions when you are in a situation of poverty because of all the stress and all the negative emotions that are flooding your mind because of the reality of the situation that you're living. Like, you are clearly going to make poorer decisions, like crime, like drug abuse, substance abuse, physical abuse of others, self-harm. Like, it is just a normal thing to happen to an individual in stress and sorrow.
It is.
It sucks, but that's reality.
But it's the truth.
And so if you remove yourself from that, you wouldn't choose those choices that you would if you were in it. And so it is an abject negative, the idea of poverty. And it is also curable, which I think is it. Okay, so it's a net positive for a society. It's a net positive for the individuals that are in poverty. And yet it is something within our grasp that we do not do because we don't think they deserve it. And that's really what it boils down to for the masses. They don't deserve it. If they did, they would get out of it themselves, period. And here's where I land on it. Again, not emotional, There's no morals attached. There's the economic side of it. Poverty costs the United States, I'm looking for my statistics here, $500 billion a year. And that is including everything from, again, legal issues, medical issues, welfare, social programs, all included. Cost on society of individuals living on or below the poverty line is $500 billion a year. And I'm going to return to this on what it's going to cost in order to remove them from poverty in a minute. But we've got another thing to go over here. Is there anything else you wanted to talk about poverty before we move on to the second reason UTI comes up? I'm sorry.
No, I think we've covered
comes up.
UTI. This isn't a UTI. This is UBI.
My bad.
Universal Basic Income. That's great. No, I think you covered all the bases there. It's a horror show.
It really is. It really is. UTIs and poverty.
Yes, both.
And so I want to comment on this really quick. Jay in the chat room is saying, it depends on the person. Some people in the hood become crackhead and some become rich dealing crack and converting to a legal business. Both come from the same family. Some people just have a spark. I totally agree. There are individuals, as we had already mentioned, that are capable, without external forces, of being the best version of them. Not thinking in terms of an individual in this, but thinking in terms of a society. Why would you not want the most productivity out of every citizen? In order to have a thriving, rich society, you would want as many members of that society to have the best opportunity as possible. And as a society, you can give that to them.
I've said this before, and I'm going to say it again. You're only as strong as your weakest link.
Yeah. So let's go to the second part. And I actually have some slides here for this second conversation in order to drive this. It's going to be a lot shorter because I want to dive into the basic income conversation here. But let's do, oops, sorry, wrong one. And that's actually the wrong frame. So let me try to fix this here. And I'm not fixing it. There we go. Okay, so there's this conversation that's being had amongst anyone that's having the universal basic income conversation. And really the reason, one of the main driving factors of the conversation even starting is the reality of the advancement of technology and robot to worker ratios. So around the world, it is becoming increasingly efficient for businesses to not use human manufacturing processes and revert to robotic. And in Korea, you can see it's much larger than it is in, say, China, but the trend is moving in the robot over human situation. And so economists
jobs.
Economists are really looking to the future and saying, look, this is a reality. This is the trend that we're going into. If we don't have humans working, where are the humans going to earn money? Like, that's the honest question. And that's a reality that we in a society have to be faced with. We can speak all we want about bringing steel and coal jobs back. Coal jobs kill you. Steel jobs are not realistic to be performed by humans in the long term. If you are competing with another steel business that's using robotic processes over human, you will lose every time. It's just the reality of the majority of these situations. So the workforce is in less requirement in a more automated age. So we have to think of solutions. Now, the solution that UBI comes up with, and we'll get into this in a second, but I want to stomp it here really quick, is not to pay everyone so they don't have to work. So let's stop pretending that that's the conversation we're having, and let's focus on the reality behind the conversation. We are moving in a trend of an automated society, like it or not. This is technology, and this is the process that technology goes through. Growth without control. And in this case, it's slowly been happening since the industrial age. So as the numbers grow, the cost of their implementation shrinks. So it's less expensive to implement an automated system now than it was even a few years ago. And I think that's kind of interesting. Of course, any technology becomes cheaper with adoption and manufacturing. There is something in the dystopian future brain of mine that says there is very much a Skynet, as Dalton
Yep.
is mentioning in the chat room here behind this. But we're not going to get into that aspect of this, only that this is a catalyst for conversation of UBI, and that's why we're having this conversation now. And this is an honest, real conversation that is being had. Who is most at risk for automation taking over actual workers? Well, the developing world, primarily. And you can give a number of reasons, from education and experience to wide use to developed countries wanting cheaper goods, so you have to pay workers less in less developed countries in order to make your goods, which again is a reality. But it's also affecting the developed world. 49% of jobs in Las Vegas are at risk, 45% in Houston, Texas, 47% in Los Angeles, etc. This is a reality that the world is facing. Many economists right now are dealing with it. Many tech giants are dealing with it. Elon Musk, Mark Zuckerberg, to name a very few. We'll go over some more here in a second. But because this is a reality to our future, this is how we are trending as a species, we have to think of ways to allow innovation, experimentation, entrepreneurship for the citizens to be able to make their own wages. And so the only way to do that is to give them an opportunity. And that opportunity comes in terms of a universal basic income. So I know a lot of you are going to be starting this conversation as soon as we dive into the idea of universal basic income as some sort of social program to prop up the weak. I want to have a conversation about that because I find it very interesting. That's where I started as well. Here's the definition that I found for the universal basic income: a model for providing all citizens of a country or other geographic area with a given sum of money, regardless of their income, resources, or employment status. And the purpose is to prevent or reduce poverty and increase equality among citizens. So I want to talk briefly about some of the ideas buried within that with you, Aura, because this idea of equality, what do you think of the idea of basic equality? Everyone's equal.
I think if we're talking equal opportunity, yes, I am all for equality. If we're talking equal outcome, fuck that.
And therein lies the problem whenever we come into conversations like that, because we do have this sense of superiority, justified in some, maybe not so much in others, as Satanists, where I am the highest embodiment of human life. I am my own God. I am the alien elite. I am better. But if you were never given, if you were never given those basic opportunities as an equal human being, well, you may not have ever realized yourself in the position that you're in now. It is the equality of opportunity that we are speaking to when we're speaking to equality. The truth is, as I see it, and I don't know, all right, let me know if you agree or not, every human being is not equal. They're not equal genetically. They're not equal regionally. They're not equal in any measurable way. Every human, physiologically, they're not equal.
Psychologically, no, we're not equal.
Our chemistry is completely different. Our DNA is slightly different. The realities of how we perceive the world are completely different. So whether your society or your religion is telling you that, no, you're just as good as Fred over there, and you will be able to be anything you want, Well, they're straight up lying to you. That's not the truth. And you can have actual, like, real measurements by just looking at facts. Can you paint a picture as good as any Renaissance painter? Can you write a symphony as good as any Renaissance composer? And the reality that you're going to run into is no, you fucking can't. And that's because they're better than you at that thing. So you just need to, as a human, find what you're good at and develop
Find
that.
your niche.
Yeah. But again, that's not the conversation we're having. I just want to, state the same thing I've been stating for years. We are not equal as human beings to each other. Some are better than others at different things. That proves we are not equal. Some people are born with brain aneurysms. Some people are missing limbs. The truth is, we are not equal. Some people are
equal.
What's that?
We're not equal.
No. And that's not to say that the difference is good or bad. It's just that it's not the same.
With equal opportunity, those who may not have had the opportunity to reach their full potential will get that chance. Mm-hmm. Those brilliant minds who are, not afforded the same opportunities because they're not the right color or the right gender or living in the right country. Mm-hmm.
So that's actually a really good point, and thank you for bringing me back to point, because I tend to stray. That we're speaking specifically to the United States. Mm-hmm. This can be extrapolated to most Western societies. There's going to be regions on this planet where none of this really works, because they're not controlled by people who want to give the opportunity. They want to maintain power through religion or politics, but they want to maintain power. So understand that this is very much a Western philosophy that we're speaking to. This is a Western political system that we're speaking to when it comes to the idea of the equality of opportunity. And so that when we're talking about the definition of every person being equal, we're talking about every person having the equality of opportunity as another within the society that they live. So if that means that an American citizen has a less equality than a Canadian citizen because their societies deem equality differently, well, that's the reality that we have to live in. That's just it. So, in this, abstract argument, Canadians are going to be given more opportunity than Americans. Okay, that's fair because that's reality. Regionally, there are differences. But speaking again, back to America. The idea of universal basic income, it's known as simply as a basic income. And the concept is not so foreign as to not actually be in practice right now, but also it's a pretty sound idea, and it's not so dissimilar from some of the systems that we have in place right now. It's just a slightly different function. Not even function, but setup. So, for example, welfare. If you are below a poverty line, and you can apply for welfare, and you'll be given a monthly amount of money in order to spend on foodstuffs and maybe even pay off some bills. And there's other government programs that'll help you with your child's food and development and school programs, etc. So we already have this sort of social safety net, but it's incumbent upon you to not only be underneath a certain line, but also apply for it yourself. And again, there's a stigma associated with that. Oh, you're down there. You can't do this yourself. You have to come to me for help as the state. Yeah, you're worthless. You're going to have to take drug tests, or you're going to have to, jump through these different paperwork hoops in order to qualify. And, if, for example, you're getting unemployment, you can't qualify because you're making $1 over this invisible line, and even though you still can't pay your bills because regionally these
still make too much.
Yeah, these levels change. So, what do you think? Or maybe you can explain to me, Aura, what is the basic proposal of universal basic income? How would it be applied?
Well, okay, so implementation is where a lot of the argument comes in.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of argument comes in. How to implement it. My original argument didn't brush on implementation, just an effective universal basic income. I posited that that amount should be right at that poverty level for the single individual, and then given in a monthly disbursement. There is implementing it can take many different strategies. You can take from the existing welfare policies and just redistribute it into a basic the universal basic income. I really entertain the idea of taxing corporations that like to pay their employees below the minimum wage or at that poverty level, who don't want to pay a living wage, should be taxed at a much higher rate to help fund the universal basic income. And those that, use a lot of, depend heavily on automation, should also be taxed because they're part of the problem.
Well, I think it's interesting because I never really thought of it in a direct way like that. I thought of it as an indirect way. So the health and welfare of the state is only strengthened by the state's supporting of its citizens. So if the state provides a universal basic income, that gives the freedom to the individual citizens to choose which job they go to. So if the corporation doesn't pay the basic minimum wage that is going to allow them to grow and thrive, then they don't work there. And that means the corporation is going to be forced to make a decision. Do I go out of business because no one wants to work for me? Or do I pay a fair wage so that I can get employees? And this is a basic idea of Satanism. It's called meritocracy, and it's a basic idea of America called capitalism.
And
those who can succeed will.
That was the argument, and it would doing it that way, making it so that the employee, putting the power back in the hands of the employee, the worker, empowering them to not have to take that shit job because they are desperate for it, allowing them to name what they're worth based off of what it is they're doing. It all truly makes it a free market.
Well, it's interesting because the majority of people who claim to believe in a free market system are the very ones that are acting through a crony capitalist system, meaning they're not allowing the system to play out. They're using public representatives in order to force legislation to protect certain corporations and certain industries over others. There's nothing capitalist about that system. There's nothing about meritocracy with that system. It's all gamed. And though, as a Satanist, I cannot find direct fault with someone gaming the system, okay? Like, if you're going to do it, okay, I get it. And there are people doing it very successfully. But as soon as it comes time to start influencing me, that's where I have the problem. And so I genuinely believe in a fair market system. I believe in a capitalist system. I do not believe in crony capitalism.
And that's what we have, though.
Yeah.
Places like Walmart are notorious for not paying their employees a fair wage. And having a universal basic income provided to each American citizen would open up the workforce. It would put the bargaining power back into the hands of the worker. It would allow their value to be determined in an open market. And the workers would no longer need to accept jobs out of desperation to eat or, have heat. Because what it does is provide that basic floor. It's not a safety net. There are no holes. It's universal. There are no stipulations other than you're a citizen and you get this. There is no caveat in what you do with it. You can save it, you can invest it, you can use it for building your own business, or funding your art studio, or getting the supplies to create awesome clothing to your heart's content. But it's the basic income, and it helps keep, for those who are in poverty, and we have data that shows that this is how it works, especially for those who are in poverty. It goes to their medicine. It goes to making their home stable, food, clothing, basic necessities, basic living necessities. No frills, just you have a roof, you have food, and you have heat. So that's what that basic floor is.
I want to talk a little bit about the fundamental ideas behind this, the distribution of it, because I think it's kind of interesting. There's 5 different aspects to universal basic income. One is periodic. It is going to be distributed on regular payments. So you're never in a situation like a lot of federal employees are now on furlough. 800,000 U.S. citizens don't know when they're going to get their next paycheck because of an emotional, reactive president. Cash payments distributed as funds rather than vouchers like with welfare. So we're not telling you how to pay your bills. We're just giving you the money in order to exist. It is up to the individual to decide whether they do good or bad with that per their own lives, not per some moral or ethical state decision. Individual, each citizen or adult citizen receives the payment rather than a household, again, like welfare. It is universal. All citizens receive the payment. That means there's no stigma attached to receiving it. No matter what, every citizen has a right to this, simply because the state wants to take care of its citizens. And it is unconditional. Recipients are not required to demonstrate need or willingness to work in order to receive it. This is where my spidey sense starts going off, because here's the basic idea. All citizens are entitled to a livable income, whether or not they contribute to production and despite the particular circumstances into which they were born. I have an internal conflict with the idea that everyone has a right to something, because universal laws of nature are very clear that no one has a right to anything. And so then you say, well, where do your rights come from? Well, they're made up. They're completely manufactured by human beings, but they're manufactured by the society in which you live. So if you are a part of a society that gives value to ensuring that every human being has a right, and you happen to be within that society, you would be a fucking idiot not to take advantage of it. Like that is antithetical to Satanism, to not take advantage of something that you have the opportunity to take advantage of. And so I have to look at something like that and say, well, it's not a universal individual right. It is a societal right based on the society you're living in that's implementing this UBI. And so under that frame, in that context, I can rationalize it and I can be okay with it. I just can't stand the idea that there are these universal rights and that there are these universal equalities, because reality is in stark contrast to that, you know? I'm sorry, what'd you say?
SJWs.
Yeah, well, I would be arguing against it, yeah, for sure. And so I want to make sure everyone listening to this understands that point, because this is a point that people can get caught up on. We are not saying that this is a universal right. We are saying that society is granting this in this context. And there is a difference there. And if you can't understand or accept that, that's understandable. But again, that's your hiccup. But there is a difference. And so within the context of this abstract idea, I can accept it as long as it is the state doing what they can for their citizens for the overall benefit of the state. Self-interest, whether you're an individual or the state, the outcome means that if you do this, if you provide this opportunity, if you provide these basic safety nets, your society will thrive because they don't have to worry about abject poverty, about automation control, and leaving your citizens unproductive and abusive and really withering on the vine, if you want to take a wine conversation with it. But again, I have to stress this idea. This was a real struggle for me to wrap my head around. It's not an easy one, I think, maybe especially for Satanists, but certainly for some Satanists to reconcile any idea of rights. Because, I mean, just coming up with my background, you know, a little bit of context, my parents wouldn't even give $100 registration fee for college. They forced me to do everything on my own. And so I understand what it means to lift yourself up by your own fucking bootstraps. That's what I fucking did. I earned everything that I have. It was never given to me. However, when I got out of the military and I was going through college, we were in Arizona and we did have to apply for welfare and WIC for our son, for my wife. And as soon as I could afford to get off of it, I got off of it. But if it wasn't for that social safety net, we would have been fucked. I would not have had housing. I would have not had a basic nutritional food source for my fucking kid. Like, that would have been a devastation to my family unit. So I am completely grateful that there was a safety net that I could take advantage of until I didn't need it. And then I just stood on my own. And
a stepping stone.
Yeah, and there's a fallacy saying out there, and I call it a fallacy because reality doesn't back it up, that if you give someone a UBI, a universal basic income, or you give them welfare, then they will just live on it and they don't want to get off of it. That is just not true. The facts fly in the face of that thought. Yes, there are some exceptions to every fucking rule. Some people will do it. But the percentages are so incredibly low compared to those that want to get off that it is not a valid argument on a societal scale.
No,
and
it's
more
not.
to the point, it speaks to the $500 billion that we're currently paying in our current system for those in poverty. If you do not like the idea of people taking advantage of welfare, it's costing us $500 billion. Is there a better way? Is there a way that would cost less? And the truth is, yeah, there is. And it costs a fucking lot less. And it's called universal basic income. And we're going to get to the number here because I think it's dramatic. So that's why I want to hold on to it for a minute longer. I want to talk a little bit about the idea of payments here. Because what happens if you start making more money than UBI is offering? And you're trying, because again, this is a system of reality. Everyone wants to make more money. Whether or not you have the skills to do it is another thing, but everyone wants to make more money. Everyone, because we have this illusion that money equals happiness. It's not
Money
true.
equals power.
Yeah, if it's a lot of money. But you certainly do have more power and control over your own life the more money you do have.
Yes.
And so because this is ingrained in an American society, we all want to make more money. So a universal basic income would not stifle that. The reality behind it is it would actually spur it in ways that you've already stated. It would give you the opportunity to invest in new companies, to be an entrepreneur, to start your own businesses, to further your own personal education, to get a higher income profession, to maybe just find a passion project and see it to its end, to
It
live
would
a
allow
life of
displaced
quality.
workers to go back to school and retrain in something that isn't being overrun by robots.
Yeah. So Chris is asking, but if everyone was guaranteed X amount, would the cost of living increase?
No.
Okay.
No. There is a certain amount of inflation, yes. But because, and this is why in my argument when I was writing my paper for my class, implementation should be put on the companies. Those higher corporations should be taxed at a higher rate, which the thing about poverty, people in poverty, when they get money, they like to spend it. They'll spend it on the same things that food stamps was already going to. They'll spend it on the same things that cash assistance was already going to. So we're not putting extra money into the economy. We're just reallocating the money that was already there. That's it. It's not. Oh, we're putting more money in there. We're just reallocating it. We're calling, and we're making it. We're taking the stipulations off of it that keep people in poverty out as well. And there will be less scams because you have to qualify for food stamps. You have to qualify for cash assistance. You have to qualify for Medicaid and housing assistance, HUD. So those qualifying resources, or not resources, but those qualifying distinctions are no longer there. Therefore, it's hard to scam something that you're already gonna get.
Right.
It's really hard. Not to say that there won't be those who try or find loopholes, because there are loopholes and exceptions to everything. But you're just taking the funds and you're dispersing it in a more equal way, not adding more money. We're not creating more money. We're just reallocating what's already there. So no, inflation won't go up, but society, it is good for society to have a little bit of inflation every now and then.
And there is every single year. Like there's a median inflation that we all have to deal with on a reality level. But even this idea of money, I'm sorry, I want to talk about this really quick here, because it's something that, because I haven't given you the numbers fully yet, it's going to be a concern for the conversation. But I wouldn't have withheld the number if it was more than what we're spending already. It is significantly less than we're spending already. So even if there were a net increase in inflation of cost of living, we would still be paying much less as a society, much less than we are now. And again, I'll get into the specific number here in just a second. I really, really want to talk about something here that Justin is bringing up, which it speaks to a misunderstanding, not only of something we've already clarified, but I think arguably to a greater stance, Satanism. So Justin is saying, it seems to me UBI would be in direct contradiction to the first point of pentagonal revisionism. Well, let's talk about that, because the first point of pentagonal revisionism is stratification. There can be no more myth of equality for all. It only translates to mediocrity and supports the weak at the expense of the strong. Water must be allowed to seek its own level without interference from apologists for incompetence. No one should be protected from the effects of their own stupidity. I do not see how a universal basic income is providing everyone equal level. Some people are going to use it one way. Some people are going to use it another way. And that's the point, is that it's not the state telling you everyone is equal. And when we're talking about equality, again, because we already mentioned this, we're not talking about everyone individually being equal. We're talking about everyone having the equality of opportunity. That is the fundamental difference. This is not an individual system. This is a state system. Satanism is an individual religion. It is not a state religion. When you're talking about pentagonal revisionism, it is the ideal moving forward to a more satanic future. And the idea of stratification is incredibly important on the individual level. At no point through UBI is the state saying that everyone is equal. It's saying we are going to make sure that you do not live in abject poverty so you can find out who you really are. Does that mean you're going to stay in abject poverty, or you're going to stay at the UBI? Yeah, there's going to be some that do that. Does that mean that some are going to use that advantage in order to propel themselves to greater heights? Yeah, some are going to do that. So there is no totality of equality. So that does not apply in this case. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Think of UBI as a rope. And it's enough rope that you can do one of two things. You can either turn it into a noose and hang yourself, or you can create a ladder for which to climb upon and lift yourself up. Yep. That's all it is. It's a rope. It's enough rope that you can hang yourself or create a ladder and reach great heights.
Right. And again, we're talking about this in the terms of a concept. This isn't happening tomorrow. So there's no reason to get emotionally attached to it or to emotionally fight it. Honestly, there are places that implement it, and we're going to go over that, some case studies. And I mean...
And it's fascinating, those studies.
It really is. But again, before we get to that, before we get to the price, there's some other things. We're already at our time limit. Do you have time to hang?
Oh, yes. Okay, it's Friday. I've got plenty of time. I got my bottle of wine. My kids have directions. My dogs will bark. That's just true.
So the idea of universal basic income was first introduced by Thomas More as in the concept of guaranteed income through his novel at 1516 called Utopia. Proponents of universal basic income include Thomas Jefferson, Thomas Paine, Abraham Lincoln, Franklin Roosevelt, Martin Luther King Jr., Elon Musk, and Mark Zuckerberg, as I already mentioned. And primarily it's because of poverty and the idea of AI-enhanced software replacing most human labor. There are some conceptual pros and cons that I'd like to go over that maybe we haven't talked about yet before we dive a little harder into case studies and actual cost. Some of the cons: critics of guaranteed income argue it would be too expensive to implement and would create a disincentive to work. An overall disincentive to work speaks against human nature, so I'm going to reject that outright. Too expensive? Well, it's been factored, and it's actually much less expensive than what we're paying now due to so many being in abject poverty. And again, we're speaking to a societal scale, not an individual scale. It could cause people to become lazy, reducing incentive to work and undermine social cohesion, but you had a note on that. Did you want to speak to that?
I did have a note on that, and yes, I will. Give me a second to pull that up. It is, where are my, there you go. Sorry, it's just down here a little bit further. All right, so Dr. Golden states that, like you said, it would undermine social cohesion. However, the Alaska Permanent Fund, which was started in 1982, has shown it's had no effect on employment and has increased part-time work by 17%. And this was done on a study in 2018 by Jones and Marinescu. Did I say that right? Marinescu?
Yeah, sure. Own it. Marinescu. Another one is the misappropriation of funds and increase in spending on drugs and alcohol. And what did you have to say about that?
That one shows that in India, the Ministry of Finance Department has implemented on a small scale a their own version of the UBI. And what they've seen is that it hasn't. What they're spending it on is things like medicine, clean water, regular food, and in doing this, it's steadied. They've seen that it's steady increase as well. That they're spending it on things to directly affect their standard of living and push it up. The medicine, let's see. There is, and then I also have one on the inflation question. However, continue.
Well, I didn't have inflation listed. Do you want to just talk about that really quick?
All right. So inflation is a cornerstone argument. Proponents against universal basic income say that because of the increasing income, it would increase spending and drive supply and demand up. And as supply and demand increase, so would the cost of living. But because we're not actually putting more money in there, and we're not buying more products of what we already have, well, people in poverty do spend. But this would, people on SNAP would use their UBI to make the same purchases. And the housing market would really be affected in the sense that it would keep prices affordable. If you have a society that gets a universal basic income, for the first time in American history, you can live where you want. Therefore, you'll have people moving to where the prices are lower, causing the housing market to drop their rates if they want people to live in their homes. And we don't have a housing shortage. We don't. There's just not people in them because they can't afford them. So
yeah, I mean, it's basic supply and demand economics.
Let's see what else. And part of an effective universal basic income would be that the UBI would increase with inflation. And since we have corporations who are paying higher taxes, or theoretically, in my argument, what I saw, those corporations would be forced to keep their prices affordable, because if they're spending more taxes, they're going to be spending more taxes. They're the ones being taxed for it. They're the ones who are also going to want to control and keep things reasonable, because if you've got inflation going up, the UBI is matching it. It's the only way it'll work too. You have to match that stipend, whether it's a monthly stipend or a yearly stipend, which again, in my argument, it was monthly. It has to be at that level. That means if inflation goes up, so does that level. So the UBI, to help offset that poverty level, would also have to increase. And if companies, the big corporations, are the ones who are being taxed to help fund this, they're not going to want that inflation to go up. Right. They're not going to want it to go up. So,
well, there's an interesting question by Zachary in the chat room. He says, if the products are imported, then the taxpayers' money would be funneled into other economies. But that's happening now. So we're not operating in a bubble here. I mean, we're talking about regular existing economics. We are spending $500 billion for those in poverty. if we stopped paying that 500 billion a year for those in poverty and instead paid that to boost every single individual with basic safety and security so that they can explore, the money that is now being funneled into other economies would still be being funneled into other economies. No more, no less. It would be the exact same that's happening right now. And so it would actually just be a net positive. We would actually have more money for individual states because they're taking the biggest brunt of poverty resources. And ultimately, it would feed into our economy because we would be spurring technology development. We'd be spurring small business development. We'd be spurring education in order to have a higher sense of profession rather than working a shit job because you have to pay your bills. Quality of life, sense of self, sense of happiness, all goes up, whether you put value on that or not. We're not saying take ourselves out of where we are now. We're saying lay a framework that UBI promises in order to ensure that not only do we spend less, there's going to be less crime, there's going to be less abject poverty. And again, every system is going to be failed because humans are involved. So I'm not pretending this is going to be like a new great whatever. I'm just saying without human intervention, the facts speak for themselves, and it's pretty compelling. Whether it would ultimately work or not, I don't know, but it's kind of compelling, and it's got me interested. So I want to talk a little bit about, just briefly here. We already have socialist programs because that's going to be the natural recourse or reaction to this. You libtards, communists, socialists, Marxists, even though no one fully understands what that means when they say things like that. Evidence because they're saying things like that. All commies should be dead. A good commie is a dead commie. Why do you want to, take my Medicare, you socialist bastard, without seeing the irony in that statement? This is the reality of the society we live in. So we have to understand that there's going to be some people that see this and say, okay, well, that's a straight up socialist program. That's communism. That will never work. Well, no, it's not. No, it's not. And no, it's not. It is literally paying less than we are now for poverty to provide a basic layer of safety, the very bottom layer of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, in order to spur human development. Yes. Something that in psychology you absolutely need in order to grow. We have lived historically with the effects of not having that.
Yes.
So what's the worst that could happen if you just tried it with it?
I don't know, 12% economy growth?
That would not be so bad, I think. That's just one of them. Okay, so let's talk numbers here. For a quarter of the military budget, or less than 1% GDP, you could lift every citizen in the United States out of poverty, and it would cost approximately $1.75 billion, compared to the $500 billion that we are paying for the fraction of Americans in poverty. 21% of all children in poverty. We're spending $500 billion. Compare that with a universal basic income with zero poverty at $175 billion. I would say that's a pretty goddamned good investment.
I would say so too.
And yeah, there's going to be people that fall through the cracks.
And
here's the funny thing. I'm sorry. Zachary is saying the products are imported. The taxpayers' money would be funneled into other economies. The United States is already $21 trillion in debt. This is less. This costs less. The difference would go into the state, driving down the deficit. Like, we understand more and less, right? I mean, this is less. Less individual burden, less state burden, less federal burden, less.
Yes, it would be less. And Alex, other countries are already doing this. They got some pilot programs. I believe you have a list and I have the same list. So
Right. And his thing, his question is, if this trend began here in North America, we're late to the party.
yeah, we're late to the party.
It is already happening. Like,
there was which president was it that wanted to implement something very similar to us, and then more recently, but because she is who she is, wanted to implement something like this, but everybody knocked it down. But we're late to the party. We've got many places that are trying this out. State case studies. Kenya.
yeah.
We have the Alaska. I mean, it's not on this kind of scale, but it is of the same thread.
Right.
What are the other ones?
Well, I want to talk about Alaska really quick, because this
Okay.
is just a promised dividend from oil earnings that
Yes.
every citizen is guaranteed. So this, as far as the argument goes, can be seen as the same as a universal basic income. Every citizen gets it no matter what. And it is happening and has been happening since 1982 in Alaska. Spending and savings increase when the dividends are distributed. So every year, citizens spend more, so it goes into the economy, and they save more into their own personal savings for emergencies when they happen. 10,000 additional jobs have been created because of this spur in economy. Net positive to the economy. Poverty rates fell from 25% to 19%. And that's just off of this one dividend, not a universal basic income in the proper form that's been discussed, but just off of the annual dividend.
And it's only a couple thousand a year.
Yeah, it's mind-boggling. And only
It is.
1% of people who admit to working less because of the dividend. So there's no real, 1% are saying, yeah, I don't need to work more because I get this. And that's probably going to be universal no matter what. Certainly, we can see that anecdotally with welfare. We would anecdotally see it in a UBI situation. That's just because some people fucking suck.
But what we will see with the universal basic income that we don't see with welfare is those people who do want to work but are caught in that poverty trap, that welfare trap, will go back to work.
Right.
They want to work. They can't because it's less affordable to work.
It is crazy because if you make under that imaginary line, you don't qualify for those state benefits that actually are worth
$1
more than that imaginary line. It's insane. Again, in the U.S., California city is testing this. As of like 2017, I think it was, Hawaii has proposed this in 2017 in order to examine it further to see if it's a reality that they could then pursue. It is happening right now in small scale in Kenya, Finland, Switzerland, and Netherlands. And in Namibia, which I thought was so interesting, when they instituted it, malnourished children dropped from 42% to 10%. Now, again, this is a third world country. This isn't United States. So the dramatic percentages we're seeing in Namibia are not going to be as dramatic in the United States. But I do think it's a very interesting number anyway. Poverty rates dropped from 86% to 68%. So the way that they implemented it did not get rid of all poverty, but it created a pretty goddamn big dent. Income beyond the UBI, beyond that basic amount of money that they were given, increased 29%. So people were encouraged to work more because they didn't have to worry about pure survival. Their Maslow's hierarchy of needs, the baseline was met, and that encouraged them to grow, which I thought was the best number of all. But a tangential side of this, part of that $500 billion of poverty that we are currently dealing with in our society, is crime. their crime rates dropped 36.5%. And even though in the United States we are at the lowest crime rate, I mean, this is, I'm pulling a number out of my ass, but I do genuinely believe it's like within 50 years. We're the lowest in 50 years. That is still a dramatic number. When everyone is given the basics to survive, you don't have to murder someone else in order to survive. It doesn't take a mathematician to understand that basic fact, and it is very compelling. So just these basic ideas, I think, are argument enough to consider it. And I don't pretend, because genuinely, I think America is always a special case. This is tough for me because I have a sense of patriotism that connects me with this country, but I cannot deny that we are on the short bus going to school compared to other nationalities out there. We are very slow, and I think it's because of our attachment, our fervent grip to Islamic Judeo-Christian religions that a lot of other nations don't have to deal with. And yes, there are those that are worse, but that's not what I'm speaking to. A lot of Western societies have moved past the bullshit that we're dealing with right now and are guaranteeing their citizens a better quality of life. And because of that better quality of life, they are encouraged to grow as individuals. So I want to, as maybe a closing bit of comment here, because we're way, way late here, past what I was intending to go. Right here. Maslow's hierarchy of needs. At the very bottom, we have physiological, and that includes food safety, food security, having somewhere to sleep, your very basic needs met. And above that, you have your general safety and security of self. As a country, we take... God damn it, I thought I had that on pause. My bad, sorry, people. As a country, we have the safety part pretty well managed. I mean, it can get better, and it has historically gotten better. But we have a police force, we have a firefighter, we have paramedics. I mean, we have a federal military to defend our civilians. We have safety pretty much covered for the most part. Physiological, not so much. We have some programs that can help, but it costs the state a lot the way that we're doing it. So we have to be forced to question, and again, question all things. Are we doing it the best way possible?
I don't think so.
I don't either. The best way for individual liberty, the best way economically, the best way for future development of a population. And that's only important because we are a part of that population. The better the population does, the better opportunities we as individuals have. And we have to be able to recognize that. We can't go into a civilization situation and just pretend like we're the lone wolf on the mountain. No. We pay taxes because we drive on the roads and we visit the stores, libraries and emergency rooms. We use police force. We use the firefighters. We use public sanitation. We have toilets in our houses. We have power that's run to our house so that we can watch stupid fucking shows like mine right here. Like, we take advantage of the society because the society is as healthy as it is. What if it was just a little bit more healthy? What are the other ways we could take advantage of that society? As a Satanist, I find that incredibly compelling. I find it fascinating because that gives me the promise of being able to realize some of my passions. That, I mean, to be fair, in this particular scenario, it wouldn't affect me anyway. I'd make way more than this.
I was going to ask you, I really do want to ask you, what would you do with an extra $1,200 a month?
I don't know, man. I'd invest it probably. Like, I don't need $1,200 to live, and so for me that doesn't really matter. But
can you imagine?
Yeah, I mean, it would be savings. It would be investments. It would be the promise of the future. If I was my mom at my age, that would mean that I could actually buy fucking new clothes for my kids every school year, and we wouldn't have to, just make do and pass down. you could actually buy toys for Christmas. You know,
Yeah.
you could actually do things for them to make them have a
You
sense
would
of
never
self.
have to know the joy of another welfare Christmas.
Bringing it 360 all the way back to Everclear, father of mine. There it is. We're probably going to have to end it there. Is there anything else you wanted to speak to on UBI?
Well, my UBI argument was against minimum wage.
Hmm.
Minimum wage is $7 and
Like 10 cents or something, or 25 cents? I mean, it's low.
Yes, thank you. $7.25 per hour.
Yeah.
That is minimum wage.
For the
It has
past decade.
been that way for 10 years. Well, we're going on 11 years now. In 2008, the minimum wage was $6.55 for a family of 4. Two kids, 2 working adults. You would have to make $15.12 per hour to be at that threshold. And I just wanted to put that in context. Universal basic income would replace minimum wage. There would be no more minimum wage. And I know that small businesses can't afford a $15 an hour living wage. It's just not without driving prices up, not without that inflation that people were worried about and asking about. Oh, if we increase our minimum wage to $15 an hour, we're going to be putting a lot of small businesses out of business. And we're going to be increasing those inflation because they have to raise the prices of their product to be able to meet the demand of the minimum wage.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's all I wanted to add.
See, and I've never understood the idea that, and let me preface my statement before I make it. I understand we are in a situation that is leveraged against small businesses. We live in a world where large corporations buy our politicians and lobby them to create legislation in their favor, thereby shutting out smaller businesses so that smaller businesses don't really have an opportunity to exist. And when we have a situation where the larger public wants to increase, and definitely the numbers bear this out, the minimum wage to $15, well, that's not a realistic scenario for small businesses to operate under, as you already mentioned. But I'm into meritocracy. I'm into capitalism, and that means that if you can't afford to pay your customers, or I'm sorry, your employees, then you go out of business. Yeah, you go out of business. That's the reality of it. If you can't make money as a business, you're not in demand. You're not owed that. Go out of business, and we will purvey the businesses that can.
We'll go to Amazon.
Yeah. And so that's where you get into that sort of, unfair advantage when it comes to lobbying and corporate interest control of our government. However, that being said, to the point of UBI, that would then level that playing field, because you don't have to worry about paying that basic staple of living wage, because it already exists. So if you really just want to work at that coffee shop because you love the human interaction, you love being a barista, well, you can do that. And you can be a perpetual student your whole life and just grow as an intellect and have a wonderful existence. If you want to be an artist and just sell your wares out of a warehouse, you could then do that. And you wouldn't have to worry about losing your fucking house, because you know that there's a source of income that's going to come in to pay for your rent.
If you want to stay at home as a mother and raise your children because that is what you feel is right and you should be doing, you can. If you have that sick parent who needs you at home, you can take care of them. The farmer who, is out of work part of the season because, seasons, doesn't have to worry about whether or not the corn is gonna whether or not they're going to have a good year. They're going to be secure. They won't have to be on unemployment for seasonal workers. They don't have to worry about that. It's already covered. The bases are covered now. Do what you will. Show us what you got. Show us what you're made of.
And from an economic standpoint, it's less expensive. Like it makes to me as a realist, take all emotion out of it. It makes perfect sense. Like we have done what we are doing right now for as long as America has been around. And we have always run into the same exact problems. Why not try something new? If it works, awesome. If it doesn't, okay, try something else. But to continue doing the same thing that doesn't work and complaining about the results is stupid. And stupidity should be painful, and I don't want to be a part of that society. I want to be in a society that is willing to take chances for the sake of that society, because that means me as an individual Satanist, I have the best opportunity to be the best version of me. And that's all I care about. It comes all the way every time back to the individual. All right, we've got to cut it off here. Thank you all so much for joining us live. I do genuinely appreciate it. And if you're not in favor of UBI, that's completely okay. Again, we're not implementing it today. It's just a discussion.
Yep, just what do you think about this?
Yeah. Again, no such thing as equality. Doesn't exist. Never will.
No.
Never has, never will. But as a society, we can at least try to give the basic equality of opportunity, which America right now promises, and a lot of other Western countries do as well. If there's a better way to do it than we're doing it now, I say give it a go. If it works, go with it. If not, go back. You have nothing to lose.
No.
Literally. Aura, it's always a pleasure speaking with you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I enjoy you as well.
This has been a really long conversation. Thank you guys from the chat room for hanging in with us. I mean, that's some heavy lifting, so I appreciate your patience, your candor. I appreciate the fighting back on these ideas. That's what makes these conversations great. Not agreeing, but challenging. That's the best part of this. Because honestly, some of the contrarian ideas that I may not have seen, you may bring up. And that's why I like it. Some of these ideas are hard for me to wrap my brain around. I have to do some mental gymnastics. It's nice to know I'm not the only one, but it's also nice to know that there's other people I can talk to about it without immediately being called a stupid name or being shut down. We can just have an adult conversation. That's why I love this stuff.
That's why I love this show too.
Yeah.
You make the conversation great. Thank you for giving me an opportunity to be part of it.
You're absolutely welcome. For all you joining us, thank you so much. If you want to support the show, you can subscribe to the YouTube channel, sign up to the email list, and if you feel like it, give me a rating or review on the website. All of the links are in the description of the email right below you. We just saw someone sneak by. All right, everyone.
Oh my God, Allie, were you in a towel? No? Okay. Thank God.
It did look like she was.
It looked like she was. I'm not that tall.
All right, everyone. Until we can speak of the devil again.
Bye, you guys.
Hail Satan.
Hail Satan.
I mean, that could have been good YouTube content.